Well, it means where we've been close.
Yeah, we might have been able to do that.
Okay.
No reason we shouldn't be able to get through this one in an hour.
All right, we're going to call to order the Canby Urban Renewal District Budget Committee meeting of May 11th, 2017 at 6:03. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We're starting out tonight with the Urban Renewal District Budget Committee meeting, and after we conclude our business with that, then we'll slide over to the city side. And Julie, would you like to take a look, please?
Robert Backstrom.
Here.
Tim Dale.
Here.
Tracy Height.
Here.
Tracy Hensley. Here. Brian Hudson.
Here.
Eric Humphreys.
Here.
Kathleen Kelso. Here.
Jason Patton.
Here.
Thank you. Greg Parker. Jack Pendleton.
Here.
Tyler Smith.
Here.
And Sarah Smith. Here. We've got everyone. Yay.
Very good. Jason and Jack are joining us over the telephone tonight. Glad to have you, gentlemen. And Julie, do we have a quorum?
We do.
All right. Next up, item number 3 is to elect a URA Budget Committee Chair and Vice Chair. We'll take nominations for Chair.
I nominate Tim Dale. Second it.
Tracy and Kathleen. Okay. Are there any other nominations? All right, we'll close the nominations. All those in favor of Tim Dale as Chair of the URA Budget Committee, please say aye. Aye. And any opposed? Thank you, folks. I appreciate the confidence. Next up, nominations for Vice Chair of the URA Budget Committee.
Nominate Bob Backstrom.
Any other nominations for Vice Chair? Hearing none, we'll close the nominations. All those in favor of Bob Backstrom for Vice Chair of the URA Budget Committee, please say aye.
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 And any opposed? Very good. Thank you very much. Next, we'll move on to old business, which is to approve the minutes from the May 12th and the June 1st, 2016 meeting. Did anybody have any additions or corrections to that? Julie, did you have any administratively that you had to do? Okay. Then I'll need a motion to accept those minutes. That's Brian and Tracy Hensley. All right. It's been moved by Brian Hodson, seconded by Tracy Hensley to accept the minutes from the May 12th, 2016 and June 1st, 2016 meeting. All in favor say aye.
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 Any opposed? Very good. Next up, number 5, new business. We received the budget message, and for that, we'll turn it over to our budget officer, Rick Robinson.
Thank you very much. The budget message is in the back of your books under Urban Renewal Agency. I would like to just touch on a couple aspects of the budget message, which is principally informational in nature. Something that I wanted to bring to your attention is that it is easy to lose track of the fact that while the Urban Renewal Agency is a revenue-generating agency and also administers a number of programs, the actual administrative function of the Urban Renewal Agency is done by the city's general fund. So you see a large transfer of funds in and this year's budget is $576,811 of funds out of the Urban Renewal Agency into the city's general fund, economic development. This was one of the questions that was asked of staff over the last couple of days, and I wanted to provide that level of clarification. Also incorporated in the budget message kind of spells out how we manage the tax proceeds, the tax increment that comes to the Urban Renewal Agency. The first obligation is to address any debt requirements, and then the second is the ongoing operating, and the balance of the funds available for urban renewal is allocated to ongoing programs or set aside to address future debt obligations. Are there any questions? Okay. If not, then with the Chair's permission, I'll move into to review the fiscal year 17-18 urban renewal proposed budget.
Very good.
Thank you very much. This is, for me, kind of an exciting budget because it accomplishes, it starts one major project and identifies and celebrates the end of another. The project that's just being completed, as you'll notice, the expenditures in the 2016-17 fiscal year is the Library and Civic Building, and we are at the same time initiating, based on action of the Urban Renewal Agency Board earlier this year, the Canby Civic Block Redevelopment Project that is more commonly known as the Hanlon Project. We have $1,320,459 budgeted for that. I'd like to touch on just a couple other proposed appropriations for the 17-18 fiscal year. In the fire department capital projects, the $312,634. We are now we're entering the third year of 4 years of an ongoing commitment that we made to Canby Fire to fund a specified dollar amount. The $312,634 includes both the expected current year budget and the unexpended prior year budget. So what you see here is the total of unexpended through June 30th, 2018. So it captures everything up to that point. We've also budgeted, as you will remember, not in the 16-17 fiscal year, but in 15-16 and 14-15, we were fortunate to have a RARE program employee working for us, Mariah, who did an exceptional job. We are once again petitioning, I believe it is Oregon State. Yes, but University of Oregon. I knew it was one of those Oregons. University of Oregon for placement of a student into the RARE program, and hopeful of success. This is a great opportunity for the city to leverage valuable resources and pay only a fraction of the cost of an employee. We don't know yet what the result of that application will be, but if we're successful, the city's cost for a full-time employee is $23,500, and that includes all of the benefits side of it as well. We've been talking for quite some time about a beautification and marketing program, and we've allocated $25,000 in the 17-18 fiscal year, most principally focused on signage, wayfinding, and some upgrades and beautification of existing signage within the city. Anxious to get this project started, as we think it'll be a real benefit and help us to more clearly connect Canby with, in one instance, Canby with the fairgrounds, and another Canby with Highway 99, with just a more attractive appearance and perhaps a somewhat more aggressive approach. We, again, have established a facade improvement program allocation of $75,000, which would fund 3 maximum allocation facade improvements. We have a number of applications that are kind of in the works or that we've been carrying for a period of time. Been talking about different ways to manage those, but our proposal and recommendation this year is for the $75,000. And then we manage, as you can see, a $3,000 for market studies and doing some due diligence on programs or projects that are just beginning to surface and for which we need seed money to do additional work to determine the appropriateness. That is the essence of the most important aspects of it. Down at the bottom, you'll see a railroad quiet zone amount of $150,000 under the capital outlay side of the. I guess I need to mention real quickly, we did reallocate the expenditures or appropriations in different directions. As Julia's looked at this, she's made a determination that some of what we've traditionally allocated as capital outlay costs are in fact materials and services. And so you see the dollars are the same, they've just moved from category to category. The railroad quiet zone, we have an opportunity, we believe, to work with the state ODOT on the engineering and design of the Elm Street and Highway 99 intersection. And so we've established a budget to assist us in funding a share of that cost. We'll have to wait and see. We've had this conversation ongoing with ODOT for a considerable period of time, but it's certainly something that is worth keeping in the budget and continuing to pursue. And so my recommendation is that we fund this in an expected amount based on conversations that Matilda has had and we've had with ODOT and their projection of costs for the engineering services to redesign that Elm at 99 intersection. We have also budgeted $30,000 towards the old library renovation. That obviously is not going to accomplish anything, but it'll help us do cleanup, make the building more presentable, and do some relatively small changes to the building that might make it more marketable. So we've established a very small budget for that. The URD projects budget is kind of a placeholder. If we have an opportunity to jump on an urban renewal project, a great example could be if somebody wants to come in and build a hotel in the community, and we need money to assist in doing some studies to determine feasibility. These are the types of funds that we could use for something like that. This budget leaves us with a $43,000 contingency. Total proposed budget is $2,643,449. Any questions?
Can you explain then, so the fire department capital projects, now it's moved up into materials and services? I don't understand the movement.
Well, we're not, it's because we're not spending the money, we're contributing it to the fire department, and the fire department is actually incurring the capital expense. We're simply granting the funds or giving the funds, contributing the funds to the fire. So it's a contribution from us, it's capital expenditure by Canby Fire.
It was put here under capital outlay in the past by mistake?
Well, just a different interpretation.
And same with the facade improvement, now it's allocated differently? Like
Yes,
okay.
yes, because we're not actually doing the project.
Okay.
It's just, when we change finance directors, we reevaluate the way we've done things in the past, and when deemed appropriate, we'll make those adjustments. We don't encourage change for the sake of change, but if we think that it will improve the overall quality of the end product, then we'll incorporate the changes. And Julie's come up with a number of of proposals relative to the 2017-18 budget document that make it both easier to read and I think more consistent with the categorization and classification of costs within our broad category of expenses. Questions?
Any more questions on the general fund portion?
Yeah, yes, I have one based on that $1.3 million for civic walk redevelopment.
Yes.
And I understand from the Q and A here that part of it was set to pay the SDCs for the project, and part is for the various
That's correct.
Okay, and then elsewhere, and I haven't been able to find a line item for this, somewhere during the Q and A, it said that the revenue from the transferred property was $200. Is that a misprint?
No, that's correct. Essentially, the property was contributed to the project to make the project successful. Consideration for that transfer was an agreement by the developer to develop first floor retail, commercial, restaurant space. And that, as you probably are aware, a space that simply is not financeable in today's marketplace.
Okay, so have we done by any chance looked, I know we don't get tax revenues off of it for a couple of years now, have we looked at the tax revenues that are going to be available for that? You know, when it's all done and everything up and
Yeah, that's not actually a conversation for our budget committee, but the answer to your question, Jack, is yes, we have, and I'll be happy to share those with you offline. They are part of the presentation that I did to the Urban Renewal Agency in December.
Okay. And when those revenues come in, do they go into the URD or the Urban Renewal Agency, or do they go into the general fund, or a combination?
No, the project is within the urban renewal district, and so the tax proceeds go into the urban renewal agency to, in our case, we did an analysis to determine what the return on the investment, essentially the repayment for the contribution, the cash contribution that we made as we move forward on this project. And so and I'll share that with you offline, again, not part of our budget conversation, but I'd be happy to share that with you offline.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about that. Let me just find out what's going on, you know, or how it makes sense and everything. Because, I mean, it's going to be great. If we get that thing going good, I mean, it's really nice.
Yeah, I will just say that the increase there was about a 600% increase in property tax generated as a result of doing the project in comparison with just selling the property outright.
Yeah, okay, yeah,
Okay.
yes, good, that's great.
And I'll be happy to share that with you offline.
Yeah, I'd like to just find out a little bit more about that.
Okay.
Yeah, thank you, that answers all. Oh, one other thing, about the URD, it gets paid off, and this is probably just my bad memory. Was the URD going to get, I had heard a number of, date of 2021.
Yeah, that's we haven't done a recent analysis of that, but when Haley was looking at it, we had collectively determined that the earliest possible date that we were eligible to repay it was 2023. Because there were some no-call provisions in the bonds that were issued, but that based on projected cash flow, we would see a payoff as early as 2027 to 2029.
Okay, now, because you're paying down the principal as you go. Now, as the principal gets paid down, does the
It happens when the last loan is retired. After all the debt obligations are met, then the agency takes action to dissolve itself, and tax revenues are reallocated to all of all of the benefiting taxing jurisdictions, and that happens at the end of the life of the agency.
Okay. Very good. I think that clarifies for me how this works.
Any other questions on the general fund portion? Okay, Rick, debt service.
Debt service is pretty straightforward. We have identified a budget year debt service revenue of 2.974,200, a debt service obligation of 1,982,068, total debt service transfer out of 1,125,000 that you'll see on the next page, which is where the unallocated portion goes. The bottom line is that we do have the revenue generated from the tax increment in the Urban Renewal Agency to meet our debt obligations and to fund the ongoing administrative costs associated with the Urban Renewal Agency.
Do you want to walk us through anything on page 5? Or?
More anecdotal.
It's mostly just anecdotal information showing you what the bond balances are year over year. I believe that yeah,
This page is actually one of those requirements for that GFOA budget award that we talked about. So this is an additional piece of information that we have to put in to show what our debt requirements are over the next, 20 years?
yeah, till the conclusion of the bonded debt. The one thing I will say is that the bottom chart that you see on page 5 reflects the balances at the beginning of the fiscal year, at the end of the fiscal year, after the debt service has been paid.
Rick, I had a question on this one. I didn't get to ask Julie in advance on this one, but with regards to the debt service fund, where exactly, I'm not that familiar with some of the, I guess you call them resources, the income portions of that. Where exactly are those coming from? How does the LID from Hazeldale, how is that coming in, for instance, and the LID from Walnut Street? How are those actually coming into us?
We invoice people annually who are on payment plans, and so we get, that revenue comes in from property owners.
Okay. So those were created and obligated when those people developed those particular properties? Is that?
Yeah, when the improvement is done, an assessment is made to all of the benefiting properties, and they have a choice to pay the aggregate balance at the time that the obligation is incurred, or to pay it over time, as I understand the program. Yes, it is. It shows you the beginning balance it says June 30th, July 1, the beginning of the fiscal year, and then after the payments, the principal payments, it shows you the ending balance.
Okay.
Any other questions for Rick?
And the one other thing I do need to say is that as you look at this, the difference in what you see, and you can find a correlation in the numbers here, between in the upper column, the third column in the upper chart, and the fifth column is the interest charge allocable to each of the bonds. So you'll see the 25,256 number, which is the same as 63017, and then the applied interest over the life of the balance of the life of the bond, and that's where you get up to the total. That's essentially the total debt obligation, including interest. Concludes my comment.
All right. Do we have any other questions for Rick on this? Everyone okay with moving on? All right, next up, we have our opportunity for public comment on the fiscal year 17-18 proposed budget. I'll now open the meeting to accept public comment on the 2017-2018 City of Canby Urban Renewal Budget. If you wish to speak, please fill out one of the testimony forms and submit them to the chair. The chair will recognize those persons wishing to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the chair. When you come to the microphone, please state your name for the record, as this meeting will be recorded. Please speak clearly into the microphone and limit your testimony to 3 minutes. Do we have anyone that wishes to speak to the Urban Renewal Agency budget? And seeing none, we'll close the public comment. And now it's time for the committee to discuss among themselves the budget. Did anybody have any further questions about the Q&A that Julie sent out on the urban renewal questions? Everybody okay on that?
One other one I had about just a general thing. How is the URD doing? Are we filling up the industrial park pretty good?
We are really, really busy right now. We've got a number of leads and that are active. It takes years to go from a lead to a tenant, but Renata and I were just talking yesterday. We both feel that 2017-18 fiscal year is going to be an extraordinary year for the city of Canby and for our industrial park. So we're seeing growth out there every year, and we have, as of this week, we have 4 potential tenants who have identified Canby as one of the finalists in their evaluation of an Oregon-based site. So we're feeling pretty good about our chances to continue to see expansion in the industrial park.
Q&A model, Julie. It was helpful because things that I didn't think of when I first read through, you get to see others' questions. That's super helpful. And a deadline, it's really good to have a deadline too.
Yeah.
Bob?
Have we named this building?
This particular building?
Well, yes. I mean, I've heard this building referred to as a library, the civic center, the city of Canby. It's got lots of names floating around out there. What's the official name of the building?
Good question.
Yeah, we call it Civic Building or the Library and Civic Building. We don't like to leave out the library in the title, so typically if somebody asks me where I work, I tell them I work in the Canby in the Civic section of the Canby Library and Civic Building.
It's a good question. Citizens have said, well, why don't we call it City Hall anymore? That's a good question.
We had that conversation a lot, and I think that mostly it was out of respect for the effort that went into building the library as a component part of that. We didn't want to lose sight of the fact or recognize and honor as we go forward the fact that the library and the civic building they're kind of inseparable now, and so we just felt that it was appropriate to capture the entire function of the building. least we didn't call it the library and planning and building and human resources and city clerk and administration building. Could have been worse.
Finance.
Could have been longer.
Yeah, but no, it was, we tried to respect the process and the desire of the council to, I mean, you were the driving force behind creating this, and your focus was twofold. One is on the library portion, the other was on the civic portion. We wanted to honor, show respect to both.
So it's safe to say library/civic center is something everyone would know what it is?
And if they came either to the library or the civic building, they'd come to the same place, so we're good. We do have different physical addresses, so. But if you send it to 220 or 222, they'll wind up in the same place. One will be downstairs, one will be upstairs.
Yeah, can I ask a question? I'd like to know more about the beautification and marketing. It's $25,000 last time, it's $25,000 this time. What that was spent on, and whether that's, I'm curious to know if that's at $25,000 we should be spending or not.
Well, it wasn't spent last time. I don't think we spent.
Projected to be spent. It's for the current.
Do we have it projected for the, yeah, but we're not going to. Most all of this is coming back to the urban renewal budget. We did not spend the funds that we had projected to spend in this 16-17 fiscal year in beautification and marketing. We spent some of them, but I don't think we spent very much, have we? Okay, yeah.
So there were 3 sculptures that were at First Avenue that were the primary focus.
Speak it to the mic, please.
Can you come to the mic? Thanks, Renata.
Oh,
Looks like
you
it's
know
not
what?
on yet either.
Yes, we are, and let me, you just refreshed my memory. The 25,000 is for the sculptures that go in the front of the library for the 16-17 budget year. And we had commissioned the Canby Arts group to work with the Call to Sculptures, and they've been working for almost the full year and have some finalists to present sculptures. We changed our focus this year, looking at signage and wayfinding, ways to bring people downtown to take advantage of the amenities in Canby. No, my apology, I had ignored something very important, and that is the sculptures that we're putting here on the front of this building that are part of this project.
Good job, Renata.
And that's what it was.
And then, Mr. President Dale, there's another question I had. Why is there a proposed increase to the facade improvement program? As those of you on City Council know, I had some questions about even why that program should even exist, and now we're increasing it.
Well, we have a number of applications, and we seem to have increased demand as part of our downtown beautification program. This actually is a question at a secondary level for the budget committee, but at a primary level, if the Urban Renewal Agency as a body wishes to eliminate the facade improvement program as a program that the agency sponsors, that's something that I would take back to the agency separate from the budget discussion and ask you at a policy level. This proposal is based on the existing policy statement of the Urban Renewal Agency to support facade improvements because it supports downtown beautification. If a future agency board wishes to eliminate the facade improvement program as a program supporting those activities, then we can bring the issue back and address it before the agency.
What would be the right way procedurally if we, for instance, wanted to freeze the expenditure of that money, because I'm sure there's always a long line for free money, temporarily while the Urban Renewal Agency reviewed the program itself and maybe considered a matching program or some other way to divvy out those funds?
It is a matching program.
Okay, or maybe we talked about reducing it so that more people could engage in it, or some other things like that.
We haven't had groundswell of people interested in accessing the money. And as a matter of fact, for a couple of years, it was difficult to find anybody that was in a position to take advantage of this program. This past year, we've had 2, I believe. Have we had 4? Well, how many have we actually funded? We funded. Yeah, we've only funded so far Lauren Bell and
I think the
Kiwanis, right? Yeah. Right. Yes.
Did I miss here at the beginning of year? I thought you said there was a long line people for this at the beginning of your answer.
No, what I was saying is there seems to be an increasing interest in this program this year. If I said long line, I misspoke, and I apologize for that. My intent was not to mislead you, but we've had an increase in interest in this program, and so based on that increase in interest and the outstanding applications that have been approved, the recommendation for $75,000 is in the 17-18 budget.
So Rick, if it was brought before the,
I just want to put in
Jason.
my 2 cents on this particular topic. When this facade improvement program started, it sort of started on the heels of the economic downturn. As we know,
Okay, I do appreciate that. Maybe I can give you just kind of a summary bottom line. Your, whatever my title, agency director's recommendation is to fund $75,000 in the fiscal year. You, as a budget committee, have the authority, if a majority of you choose, to fund more or less, or to recommend more or less. To make a recommendation different than the agency director's recommendation. So that certainly is something that is completely within your purview to do.
Do we have a projection yet as to when the Dahlia project will be completed and we can expect tenants to start hopefully moving in?
We're looking at August of 2018 as a probable date.
Okay, so not within this budget?
Rick, is the next meeting when we actually start getting into the nuts and bolts and doing that kind of thing?
No, this is the time if the committee wants to, just kind of a quick background. The way this works is the budget that you're looking at is your city administrator's recommended budget. You as a budget committee have the opportunity here today, and this is the purpose of this meeting, to review this recommendation, and if you as a committee majority wish to make a recommendation different than the city administrator's recommendation, then that recommendation will go forward to the city council and the Urban Renewal Agency Board, along with my recommendation. And then ultimately, the agency board will make a determination on the agency budget, and the city council will make a recommendation on the city budget. But the reason that you are here today is that you have an opportunity, and this is a good example of an area that you have the authority to approve an action that is not consistent with the recommendation of the city administrator.
One question about that for the facade improvement program. Where do I find the previous year's expenditures? Is that the civic building? Where is that in previous years?
It's down under the capital outlay section.
Okay, here we go.
Did you find it? Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So that's what we've spent, and we only spend what the grant, in other words, somebody has to apply for a grant and it has to be approved, right? So if we only got requested grants for 20,000, we only spent 20,000, is that how it works?
That's how it works, and we would pay, what happens is that the requester would get bids for their proposed project, and the program would pay 50% up to a maximum of $25,000. So if the project was $25,000, the agency would contribute $12,500. If it was $100,000, the agency would contribute the maximum, which would be $25,000, and the business would be responsible for the other $75,000.
Where did the funds go last year for the facade improvement program? Where were they spent?
Yeah,
The 50,000 that says in the. projected budget?
$1,400. Do you remember which project that was?
I'm sorry,
Lauren,
I can't
It
hear.
was the Lauren Bell project.
You're talking about last year's,
Yeah,
the 50,000 for last year?
yes.
That's the budget. for
That
this
was the
year.
budget for
Well, it
this year.
shows here that's going to be the projected amount spent this,
That's because we
Okay.
had two applications that we have approved.
Okay.
We don't know yet whether they will be able to come in before June 30th or after June 30th.
and where are those applications, what projects are those going to be, if they're approved?
As I recall, one is Kiwanis and the other one is the mini storage in the urban renewal. It's within the urban renewal district, just on the other side of Highway 99 and southwest 4th Avenue, I believe.
By the high school.
By the high school. And that is a $170,000 project, if I remember right.
So the maximum that we
They
go
would
is
be eligible for
25.
would be 25.
Mr. Chair, Mr. President, I would move that we consider amending that down to something along the lines of $40,000. Because of the nature of the way the program is right now, there is not any grounds for rejecting an application. As we saw, the existing, if they meet the criteria, it's sort of automatic that they get it. And I believe the program, will, not that we can change it today, but is not exactly an equitable program in that people that do not necessarily even need the financial help, like myself, a law firm, could go and get city money to improve their building. And so I just think that to increase it right now when it hasn't even been using that much, if it's been using 18,000, 1,400, and then last year used all of the money, but maybe an ongoing average, it would be closer to $40,000. And instead of increasing it to 75, put it more like $40,000.
So Tyler's made a motion to reduce that amount to 40,000, right? And it needs a second in order to proceed on discussion.
I'll second it.
Okay. So Julie can record that. Moved by Tyler, seconded by Jack. Now we can have discussion on it.
Can I speak to the motion?
Sure, go ahead.
So I understand, I've asked Rick, who's quite educated and gave me a very excellent answer on this, the purpose of why these things exist and what they're generally used for. And that's to, encourage and help businesses to beautify the community, which adds business and potentially adds property value. And so you use public funds, taxpayer money, to do that. However, that raises the interesting question: where do you draw the line, and who do you give the money to? If $75,000 is going to improve our city, then why not 100,000? Why not 150,000? Why not 200,000? Why not $1 million? Why don't we make this the most beautiful city in the entire world? Well, because you have to draw the line somewhere. So if you're drawing a line at 75 or 50, then you're really taking a look at how are that 50 or 75 or 40 spent. What's the process for selecting how it's spent? And right now I don't think our process is good, so I think we should trim that a little bit and make sure we're using that money in the most efficient manner.
Anyone else want to speak in favor of the motion? Jack, did you want to speak in favor of it?
I wanted to ask a question. What criteria do you use to select if I come in and say I want a grant for X number of dollars, here's my bid, this is what I want to do. Who decides whether the city invests money in that, or the URD invests money in that, and what criteria do they use?
Well, it is, a project has to be within the urban renewal district, number one. And the applicant has to present a proposal that would represent an improvement in the facade of the building to be improved. And then the request would go before the Urban Renewal Agency for consideration and ultimately a vote up or down in favor of or in opposition to the facade improvement. As a practical matter, if funds are available, the project is within the URD, it's a demonstrably better facade after the project is completed than before it is undertaken, then the project is almost automatically approved.
Okay.
And I will add that the criteria does not include an economic analysis of the applicant's ability to pay. The objective is to stimulate any business within the URD that has a need for facade improvement, and the result of which would improve the overall beauty and quality of our community, is to create an incentive and an encouragement to, in fact, undertake that improvement.
What kind of, if they don't do, I guess, if they don't do what they said they were going to do, when do they get the money, and what kind of accountability do they have to? Do they not get paid until after it's done?
I believe they're reimbursed when Renata can come and speak to this. She manages the program on a day-to-day basis.
Just a quick clarification, Rick, on point of order. Are we getting into URA policy matters that are outside our purview, or is this fair territory?
You know, I think for purposes of, you've got a motion on the table, and the underlying question of whether the funds would be appropriately administered in allocating them to a project, it probably isn't too far outside the purview.
Okay.
So I wanted to add a little bit more context about how the design is approved. There's a matching grant that could develop a design concept or a construction drawing. And then there's a design committee of the Main Street program that reviews that for appropriateness and makes a recommendation to the city council, the urban renewal district. The urban renewal district can decide whether they like it or not and whether they want to fund it fully or not. That's a completely discretionary decision. In terms of the drawdown, it is a reimbursement basis, so they get a bill, they pay half of it, they prove that they've paid half of it by a cancel check or whatever, and then we reimburse them as they go. So it's not like they need to complete the entire project and then wait to the very end to be reimbursed. Sometimes it's a cash flow issue for the owner. Another thing to consider is that the facade may not be owned by the business, it's owned by the property owner. So there needs to be a agreement between, the property owner needs to sign the application. So what we're investing in is the commercial stock of our downtown, not necessarily in a particular business.
Brian, you had a question?
Yeah, Renata, since you're there, can you give us a recap of what businesses and property owners here in downtown have taken advantage, or within the urban renewal district have taken advantage of the facade improvement program?
There have been quite a few, actually. In earlier days, T-Line at the corner of Ivy and 99 was a recipient. The Bricks and Minifigs building did a major upgrade. The Advantage Mortgage building was a facade improvement project. The American Legion was one of our biggest ones. Not only did they take advantage of the facade improvement program, it was like a $95 million project, $95,000 project.
No wonder you're having problems.
The building right next door to it, I can't remember, it's a bar, but Mike's Place. It invested. Lauren Bell is investing in his, on 2nd Avenue, we're really excited about Holly Mall coming through. There's a doctor's office on Waite Park, on the west side of Waite Park. It's transitioned, but I don't know who the new, right.
Parsons?
No, they
did the
They
awning.
did the awning, they had a tear in the awning. There have
Graham
been
did too, didn't he?
I'm sorry?
Didn't Graham also, like 3, 4, or 5 years ago?
Maybe.
No, they weren't a facade improvement, but they are taking advantage of our Blaze Sign program. There have been more, there have been some smaller ones, like the music store did a paint. Some of them have been very low budget and have made a dramatic difference, and others have been more expensive. The one right next to it, I think it's the one that has the trophy store and the hair salon, that was an awning and paint project. So there's an example of some of them. But all in all, I think we've had 15 projects.
So do we know, or do we track what increase in value that's created on those buildings from a tax revenue standpoint?
We haven't. It's certainly something that we could do, although it'd be hard to argue that $3,000 in paint made a dramatic.
Sure.
But we could do a evaluation based on, the year and the assessed value of that year and the following year. That's something that we could do if it's something that a renewal.
But I think it's safe to say with, like, when we look at, Canby Herald, the Bricks and Minifig building, I think even at one point, the CAMS, all of those were extensive enough to where, as part of that investment, has definitely increased their value, and therefore the tax base for their renewal district.
Exactly. Countryside Living was an earlier one that was a dramatic transformation.
That was also, yeah.
So.
Thanks, Renata. To the points there, Taylor, and the numbers in previous years in 14, 15, 15, 16, there were still, businesses were hanging on by a thread. So, there was no investment being done. So I don't know if those are the best years to look at in terms of investments into downtown. We even scaled back dramatically on what we were looking at doing and have done. So I don't know if those are the best numbers to look at. In terms of long-term, and we already have 3 businesses in queue that are wanting to use it. I think to come back and say, we're putting a freeze on it, when we're looking at.
I didn't hear him say when to put a freeze, just lower the money.
Sorry, okay, or lowering the funds available. I don't know if I can see that being a necessary net benefit. I mean, you're right, we could have set this at $250,000 and, and 70, where we've been has just kind of been, that's been the pass-through or what gets it at least funded in part. So, yeah, I'm intrigued by the desire to do that.
Do you have a question, Kathleen?
I just have a comment. I'm not sure that I understand the purpose of reducing it to 40,000, because if I'm hearing it right, the question is, what are we getting out of that? That there doesn't seem to be, at least this is what I was hearing, the criteria that says anybody can have it, and I don't understand why reducing it to 40,000 from 75,000 would address that issue. That seems to me to be a separate issue than the budget amount, that 75,000, if that's there, if the concern is how those grants are applied, then that seems to be separate from the amount. Personally, I'm very much in favor of the facade improvement program. I'm very proud of Canby and the way that it looks. I go into some of the neighboring communities and come back here, and I have a smile on my face when I come back. So I see it as a benefit to us. I don't think there would be I think it could be appropriate to look at how the grants are approved, but I don't see that reducing the amount would make that happen.
One of the, I think we need to keep in mind that one of the functions of the Urban Renewal Agency is to beautify the urban renewal district, and the opportunity to leverage with a maximum of 50% contribution towards an improvement or a beautification of an existing business is not insignificant. And essentially we, the Urban Renewal Agency, are leveraging private money to improve the public appearance of our city. And that really is from, and I wasn't a huge fan of this program, as Renata will tell you. We've had a lot of conversations about it in the early stages, but I am now. I think that it delivers what it promises to deliver, which is an improved downtown community.
Yeah, I go along with that logic that you're saying. Tyler, if I understand what you're saying, is that you may not like the criteria. So your way of addressing that is reducing the amount of funds there. To me, if I seriously believed that, I would zero out the account. If I didn't think that this was a program that was working, reducing the amount of money poorly spent isn't the right answer. It would be zeroing it out. So, and also I don't like making policy through budget. This is a balanced budget. The money goes in here. We have the ability as an agency to change the criteria or eliminate it. Then it would just be cash carryover. But this seems kind of like turning the sock inside out and trying to squeeze out different criteria through the budget process.
I think you have a good point. I mean, I would agree that changing the criteria is my main concern. I mean, I still don't like the aspect of, first three in line that meet the very vague criteria, could in theory get their full 25. I mean, this project, the whole system is ripe for being scammed. You can take a private money loan to double your value of your property and get the city to pay for half of it.
I don't like how you're spending your allowance, so I'm going to give you zero allowance. That doesn't really make sense. If you want to crack open the criteria, I'm all for that. But I don't think the budget process is the way of doing that.
That would be done in agency.
Yeah.
Sarah?
I think most of what I was concerned with being on the record has already been said. But in addition to that, I think an important part of looking at the budget is that a number of businesses in town, the people that own the business aren't here, they aren't otherwise invested in the community, and even if they have had the funds to do the facade improvement, it's still been challenging to get them to buy into the process. And if this money, while I understand your concern, incentivizes them to improve the look of a city that they're otherwise not invested in it at all, I think that's a win for our community. I hear what you're saying about your concerns, but I think that I don't know that I like the idea of us applying discretion to who's deserving and who isn't deserving of of funds. We have a criteria, it's the urban renewal district. I mean, we have other criteria as well in terms of what they're going to do with the money, and I'm comfortable with that, but certainly budget isn't the place to change policy, and I think that we agree with that. But I also agree with this money being consistent with the mission. And when you say why not 250, why not $1 million, I think that part of that is because this is what works for the money that we have right now that allows us to execute the mission of the urban renewal district without creating an unbalanced situation.
The theory is that you improve these and you improve the tax base, and therefore you improve the revenue, and therefore the fancier your buildings are, the more you improve the property value, the more you improve your revenue. And if that was true, then it would create a snowball effect. And so that justification sort of falls flat, and you follow it to its logical conclusion. So
I think our objective is to improve the aesthetic of downtown Canby. I mean, that in a nutshell is the focus of this program, and we very, very carefully stay away from reviewing the financials of the businesses that are doing the applications. So this is not a financially based operation, and I certainly would never recommend that the Urban Renewal Agency engage in an activity that would require that businesses submit their financial statements to us to determine whether they are in financial need of this project. That's an even more subjective analysis than whether the building would look better with or without the facade improvement.
I mean, and to that point, you can have financials that make it look like you're in better need than someone else, but it's also maybe because you poorly manage your money. It's still not a true indicator of need. So
the agency administrator and the agency chair have heard the concerns about the execution of the program itself and the protocol, and so we can take that up, Rick, as an agency matter later. Back to the question of...
I'll withdraw my motion.
That makes it easy.
Okay, we have a withdrawal by the primary. Jack, as the seconder, do you wish to withdraw?
Yes.
All righty, then we'll call the motion dead.
Can I make a comment? I mean, I didn't get to jump in there before the rescinded. Just for the record, because I wanted you all to know my thought. It's brief, too. I think this is a good opportunity, too, for small business outreach. Last week, we had a small business owner, come speak to us about what can the city do? How can you work with us in a better way? And this is nice outreach as well. We want to see you succeed, and this is how we're going to do it and incentivize it. And I think it would look kind of grim if we sort of said, we think you might be scamming us for this, so we want to cut it down. I think that's too negative an approach as well. So I think it's this positive outreach.
Well, for the record, it's no secret that I want to see this whole agency go away. That's been clear with everybody for probably the last 5 years now. And this program is one of the things that I get the most complaints about because they feel like it's welfare for the businesses. The taxpayers don't like this program. So I was actually going to vote for the motion just as a way of starting to make that program go away incrementally. But if we can, I would like to crack open the criteria and reevaluate how this program is administered so that I have a better answer for people who come and complain to me.
And I see Rick took notes on that, so
thank you.
We'll take it up as an agency matter down the calendar. Are there any other comments on the budget by the committee? Bob?
I don't know if this is appropriate at this time, but it goes along with what Tracy just said and what you just said. I think incrementally, there's a large population out there that wants to get rid of urban renewal as soon as possible. That's no secret. And I think that they want to see some progress. They want to know how that Pioneer Park is being developed, and at what scale is it? I mean, if it was formed in 1999 or 2000, and we're now 17 years into it, are we that much filled out? How much is left? What's the percentage of that area that's filled out? And what can the public see as, you guys have even said, I've heard you say in your meetings, that you want to terminate this program as soon as possible. So I think that's feeds into that idea. And yeah, there's been a lot of, I was totally not in favor of urban renewal for a long time, and I still want to see it retired as soon as possible. Doesn't mean it hasn't done some good, it's done a lot of good, but I think it's going to be time.
My job will be infinitely easier when the tax increment for the city comes back to the city. So I'm not going to argue the value of paying off our debt service and seeing the increment return to the taxing jurisdictions. That would be cutting off my nose to spite my face. If we could do it next year, I'd be a happy camper.
But to your point, Bob, I think we're, what, about a third full out there in the industrial park right now? You know, and so, you know, we look at it, you're right, it's 1999, 2000, so it's been 17 years. And in that time, again, 2 recessions have stymied development out there. And, you know, Renata has brought a number of projects to us that we are seeing gain tremendous traction, and where we are finalists on a couple of projects here that we know of already.
3 for sure.
So, you know, and again, a long-standing piece for me is that industrial park is what's going to help us down the road here pay this off and do things like the parks that we want to do and all those aspects to our city. So the investment in that engine is huge. So is the facade piece, the $75,000 by zeroing it out, move it to debt service? Maybe that's $75,000 less that we, you know, that comes off that line if that's where it chooses to go. But does $75,000 invested well in the right project help speed that process up? And so so if it's a conversation about the who, the what, the where, the why, and the when on terms of the facade piece, then yeah, I think we have that dialogue to make it, if it's worth diving into and making a better program, then I think that in the long term will help us out tremendously, speed that up or get us to that end point there.
The discussion on the URA budget? Does everyone feel like they've had an opportunity to have their questions asked and answered? Does everyone feel like they have a good understanding of the budget?
Jack's got something.
Jack, did I hear you?
I don't know whether this is the appropriate time to ask this. It might be better under streets, but it just came out, just occurred to me. We're talking about urban, beautifying Canby, making it more attractive. And at one time, there was talk of cleaning up 99E, cleaning up the street, putting in a nice, center, maybe not center strips, but at least painting on the road or so forth. Various things like that to beautify the highway, and instead of it being at this point, kind of pockmarked mess. Is there still any discussion on that, or has that gone away? I mean, I know that's got ODOT involvement in it big time, but have we ever looked into that again further?
Well, we have the 99 beautification plan, but we don't have funding to support it. And we don't, at this juncture, have ODOT support for anything that we might contemplate. Our first and biggest challenge, and you're right, this is a little bit outside the context of what we're discussing tonight, but our first and biggest challenge really is that Elm and Highway 99 realignment for the quiet zone, as that will be the single biggest change we can make to traffic flow and to our downtown community, and we'll keep fighting to achieve that. But beyond that, we've got a great plan, but no funding to support that plan, and so it really is not in our A list of things to do in urban renewal.
Okay, is that, when you say funding, is most of that got to come from ODOT, or is that our money, or where does that come from?
Well, the beautification side is our money. It would be urban renewal money, and the authority and the permitting would principally be a combination of ODOT and UP Railroad.
Okay.
All right.
The reason I'm asking is I go out north of Portland sometimes and go through Linton, and they took what used to be a real kind of a mess through there, and it was pretty nice. They got a median strip of painted bricks,
Right.
Chairman Dale, I have a question.
Yes, Jason?
In here, it talks about how when the urban renewal district was formed, the taxes were frozen, and those original taxes are still being funded.
That's correct.
So when these properties, the city has now turned over to have this taxable building built on, will the tax as far as what the original tax value of those properties would have been? Or will there be at least some incremental increase in tax revenue coming into the city from those properties being turned over from a city property?
We're not quite sure of the answer to that question. We're going to rely on Clackamas County to give us the answer. If, in fact, that base does accrue to the underlying taxing jurisdictions, then the number is going to be fairly small because it'll go back to the last date that they were operational. As a practical matter, City Hall has always been a public building, so I don't believe that it would have any initial value. I don't know about the PD building. It had a previous life as a auto shop, I believe, and so I'm just not sure of the answer to that question. And we had that conversation, but the number is relatively small, irrespective of what happens, because it's based on the historic value. And we just decided we would wait until Clackamas County was able to tell us what they think.
Okay. One of the, I hate to keep asking questions like this, but this is where they seem to fall into the police building, the old police building, the mural side of that. Again, talking about urban
Not on that particular building, but yes, we actually have a fairly active program looking for businesses willing to have murals on their buildings. We just don't have a lot of takers.
Okay.
Okay, is everyone comfortable that they're ready to move forward up or down on approval of the budget? Jason, Jack?
Yes.
Oh.
I'm not asking all the off-the-wall questions.
Not at all.
All right, I'll,
I am.
what, I missed what Jason said.
He's happy as a lamb.
Happy as a lamb, all right. I need a motion to approve the budget. The text is there in front of you under Section 8.
I move that the Budget Committee of the Canby Urban Renewal Agency approve the budget for the 2017-2018 fiscal year in the amount of $5,751,482, and to levy property taxes for the 2017-2018 fiscal year for the maximum amount of revenue that may be raised by dividing the taxes under Section 1C, Article 11 of the Oregon Constitution and ORS Chapter 457.
Second.
Second was by Tracy.
Second.
All right, it's been moved by Sarah Spoon, seconded by Tracy Height, to approve that the Budget Committee of the Canby Urban Renewal Agency approve the budget for the 2017-2018 fiscal year in the amount of $5,751,482, and to levy property taxes for the 2017-2018 fiscal year for the maximum amount of revenue that may be raised by dividing the taxes under Section 1C, Article 11 of the Oregon Constitution and ORS Chapter 457. Any further discussion?
Yes, Mr. President. To the maker of the motion, I'm not privy to whatever you're reading off of for that particular motion, or the oh, there we go. Well, I don't know where the $5,751,000, that does not match up with any of the numbers that I have on the URA budget.
Total of the general fund and the debt service fund together.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You okay, Tyler? with that? All right. Any other discussion on the motion? Then I'll call for the question. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And And any opposed? Motion carries 10-0. Yes. Mr. Budget Officer, does that conclude our business for tonight on this matter?
Yes, it does.
I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
It's been moved by Brian Hodson, seconded by Tracy Hensley to adjourn. Non-debatable. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And we are adjourned. If you'll pick up your next packet, it says City of Canby Budget Committee meeting at the top. We will call the City of Canby Budget Committee meeting to order on May 11th, 2017 at 7:18 p.m. If it's the pleasure of the committee, I would like to write on our previous opening Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence. All in favor? Great. Julie, do you need to do another roll call?
Yep.
All righty.
Robert Backstrom.
Here.
Tim Dale.
Here.
Tracy Height.
Yeah, here.
Tracy Hensley. Eric Humphreys.
Here.
Kathleen Kelso. Jason Patton. Hello. Greg Parker.
Here.
Jack Pendleton.
Here.
Tyler Smith.
Here.
And Sarah Spoon. Here. Thank you.
And do we have a quorum?
Yes.
All right, next up under old business, we have the approval of the minutes from April 28th, May 5th, May 12th of 2016. And Julie has made an administrative correction to those.
I corrected the spelling on
Tracy Heights' name
Yes.
and Tracy Hensley.
and Tracy Hensley.
All right. Does
Or
anyone,
Kim corrected.
does anyone have any other additions or corrections to those minutes? All right, I need a motion to approve them.
I move that we approve the minutes from the April 28th, 2016 meeting. Do you need three separate motions, or can we just do them all together?
Go ahead and say the dates.
Okay. The May 5th, 2016 meeting and the May 12th, 2016 meeting.
Second was Kathleen. All right, it's been moved by Tracy Heights, seconded by Kathleen Kelso to approve the minutes from the April 28th, May 5th, May 12th, 2016 meetings. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Any opposed? Carries 10-0. Under new business, we'll turn over to our budget officer, Rick Robinson, to receive the budget message.
Thank you. I am going to give you the Reader's Digest version of this budget message and trust that you've all had an opportunity to look at it. I am going to try to move through the general fund in the next 40 minutes, if possible, to try to keep a promise we made to you to get you out of here as close to 8 o'clock as we can. I do think that's possible because we only have one substantive change in this budget from the previous year, and that is the proposed addition of one staff person in the administrative budget. I will draw your attention to page 3 in the budget message where you see the trend for expenditures. You'll see a fairly steep uptick in 14, 15, 15, 16, and then leveling off between 16, 17, and 17, 18 fiscal year. Those are all expenditures. You sometimes get a bit of a skewing of that depending on what happens on the public works and some of the non-general fund programs. But if you look down below in the general fund area, the 16-17 projected budget of $8.4 million versus a proposed budget of $9.6 million, and then compare that also with the 16-17 initial budget of $10.2 million, you'll see that we're right in the ballpark of where we should be operating. We have two fairly substantial areas of increase in the general fund budget, the first being the increase to the public employees retirement system. That has been taken into consideration. We briefed you on that potential last year, and an expectation that the increase would be material. We haven't let you down. That increase is material, but it is also manageable within our existing budget. We have taken, as we did in the previous 2 years, a very, very conservative approach in establishing the fiscal year 17-18 budget. There are no superfluous expense requests. Nothing, in my opinion, is out of line or not necessary to the ongoing operation of the city. You will notice a small decline in the general fund ending fund balance from, I'd say small decline. It seems like a large decline, but it's really not, from 27 to 22%. But our strategic goal in establishing our ending fund balance is 20% of operational expense, and we're at 22%. And so we are moving in a direction that we need to move, and that is to get us into that. And I like to stay in the 20% plus or minus 2%. That's my typical goal, and using the reserves as that cushion that allows us to move gradually up and down through the economic cycles. And they are going to happen, and we can't avoid them. What we can do is plan for them and then adapt our operating programs and policies in a manner consistent. So that is the most significant aspect of this particular budget. I will tell you also that the PERS rate increase guarantee is a 2-year rate, and so the rate that we adopted and incorporated in the 2017-18 budget is the same rate that we will see in 2018-19. We have also budgeted for health insurance increases. We are currently working with our healthcare providers to determine what that ending number will be. We do think that it's going to be greater than the 6% cap before a sharing is put into place. However, we don't have the final numbers on that. And at the time that we do, we'll sit down and work through that with our labor groups and come to a conclusion. I will tell you as we go in and initiate these discussions that during this phase of our discussion, if your questions relate to collective bargaining or employee benefits, I'm going to turn them back to you and not respond. This is not the place to talk about matters involving collective bargaining or employee benefits. That happens at a different venue, and it's beyond the scope of the Budget Committee. In looking at, if you'll turn to, any questions on the budget message? I just gave you the 30,000 foot, but there's more detail in it.
I do have a question on the graph on page 4. The general fund balance.
Yeah.
Is that the amount of money, you say, to equate it in personal terms, is that the amount of money if I started the year with, say, $50,000 in the bank, and I spent $100,000, I ended up with $60,000 in the bank or something?
Basically, I think that's a good generic description.
Okay, because what I'm concerned about, just from a very general perspective, is we can only raise our taxes 3% a year.
Well, we know that that the economy runs in cycles and that nothing is forever, and what we do is adjust and adapt in the upward cycles and downward cycles. What we've done and this is my third budget cycle with, or my third budget with the city of Canby. What we did in my first year was embrace the cuts that had been made by by the council and the budget committee in the previous year, and strengthen those cuts by making a series of decisions not to increase in strategic areas. We've carried that philosophy forward for the last 2 years, even acknowledging that we are going to see some increases in our PERS rates. We recognize that the greatest cost driver to us in fiscal year 17-18, the greatest single cost driver are the PERS rates. And we have adjusted and adapted to those. We also recognize that those rates are not going to increase again for the 17-18 fiscal year. However, we are going to see growth in property taxes, as you've identified, 3% in existing property, a minimum of 3% in existing property, and that could go actually higher depending on other factors that the tax assessor takes into consideration relating to reductions that were made in prior years during the downturn. Taking that that analysis and adding in the projects within the city that are going to be completed this fiscal year. Your question relating to the, or statement or comment relating to the fact that industrial projects bring more tax-generating revenue and are more supporting than non-industrial or residential projects is an accurate representation. However, what we are not doing that one would expect is if the analysis that you presented in your comment and question is accurate, what we're not doing is growing our city's infrastructure in an amount consistent with the population growth and the growth in the assessed value. We're holding the line. So what we're seeing, and we saw it year over year, and I still feel that we're in a good position this year, and what we'll find is that we're saying that our projected fund balance will be 22% at year end. Our projected fund balance, I will say for the record right now, at June 30th, 2018, will be at least 25%. Because we never spend 100% of our expenses, and we're conservative in our estimates of revenue, as we should be. So I feel that we're in a really good position if we maintain a very conservative approach to budgeting and to administration of the budget that we do manage.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
So the next item on the agenda is the overview of the new format. A lot of the changes that you see, especially in the reader's guide, this is probably the biggest change from prior years. A lot of these are requirements from the Government Finance Officers Association, GFOA, but they're really good requirements that help the citizens understand what the city is, where we came from, what we do, what our authority is, and, lots of demographics. That's actually one of my favorite parts, to learn all the different things about the city. So I don't know if anyone has any questions on that section, but the majority of it is really a requirement. And then the next section, the revenue and expense section, this is really supposed to be the 5,000-foot level of revenues and expense for the year. Lots of charts and graphs again, trying to show different percentages of how our revenues are made up. And then in the expense section, on page 25, this is property tax, and where does the property tax dollar go that everybody in Canby pays, that the property owners pay? So if you took $1, City of Canby would get 21 cents, basically. So, and then in the expense section, again, how does all the expenditures of the city in total break out? And 46% of the expenditures in the city are personal services. That's actually lower than I've seen in other cities. I was kind of surprised. But when you think about everything we do, we're going to be heavy on the personal services side. But I was really surprised that it actually came out lower than what I've seen in the past in other cities, so. There's sections in here that talk about the PERS rates, benefit costs, try to show, how much per citizen or per 1,000 citizens for different things. Talks about our debt, capital outlay for the year. Our 5-year capital improvement plan is on page 32. This is anything past 1718 is a guess. That's our best guess at this point, and I can absolutely promise you that that will change before next year's budget comes before you. But the next page gives you the description of the projects that we are going to do this year or that are slated to be done and are budgeted for. That next section, this is the whopper, all the numbers for each department. This is what Rick's going to go through in just a minute as soon as I quit talking. The appendix, lots of more factual information, FTEs, how the FTEs break out by fund. This kind of helps illustrate some of the questions I received in the Q&A as far as why are there percentages of people and weird, 0.3 FTE. Because we take every position and look at it and say, okay, what are they going to work on next year? And their time gets allocated to those different buckets that way. So this shows you how every single person's time is allocated for next year. Salary schedules, whole section on how we administer overhead and internal charges for fleet, facilities, and tech services. And then a lovely glossary and acronyms. So there you go. It's yours.
Quick question. What is the Logging Road Industrial Park? Is that St. Pioneer Park? I mean,
That's our larger industrial park, yes.
why is it called, the official name isn't Logging
Is
Road.
that the AFD
Is it?
that you're looking at?
Page 31, I'm just wondering if I missed something. It just says Logging Road Industrial Park, and I just thought, wait a minute. Is that another name for Pioneer Park, or what do we call it, PIP, Pioneer Industrial?
Separate,
Isn't that
Oh, it's separate?
and JB Plastics?
Yeah, thank you.
So the Canby Pioneer Industrial Park starts at Fred Meyer and kind of parallels with the railroad tracks to the east and goes to Malino Road. It's kind of a big triangle. Logging Road Industrial Park is just to the west of those railroad tracks, and it includes Club Fit and JV Northwest and Hawksoft, et cetera. So it starts at Pine, and it goes all the way down to Township.
Thank you. I get it. Thank you.
So we are going to be focusing exclusively on the general fund today or this evening, now that we are through urban renewal. And I am going to start you on page 36. You'll find as you review this budget that there are two sections that have essentially the same information. I'm going to take you through the section that doesn't have all of the goals and objectives, as those are things that you can look at later, but they're not subject to discussion. They're informational only and not relevant to the decision process that you're going to engage in. So I'm going to stick you to the numbers piece of this. Beginning on page 36 and continuing to page 37, you'll see all the resources
Can you please bring your mic over
that
to you?
are used to fund operations in the city's general fund and by revenue type. And as you look through them, the strong and appropriate measures to compare the 2016-17 projected with the 17-18 proposed. And because the projected could be adjusted from the budget based on 10 months of data that we've been able to compile from the adoption of the last budget. One thing that I can guarantee you with 100% accuracy is that the numbers are not the same at the end of the year that they are at the beginning of the year. Budgets are all estimates, and they're all based on future events, and none of us have a crystal ball that's adequate to be 100% right. But as you will see, they're actually pretty darn good in the overall. So as you look through, I'm not going to go revenue source to revenue source unless you have a specific question about a revenue source. I'm going to take you to the bottom of page 37 and show you that the revenue budgeted for 16-17 was $10,482,000. The projected is $10,641,000, so about $160,000 above what our initial budget is. And then
Can you speak into the mic, please?
I'm sorry. Then our budget estimate for fiscal year 2017-18 is $11,136,995. So the best comparison to see the increase in general fund sources is to compare the 11.1 million against the 10.6 million, or an increase of about $500,000. Any questions on the on those revenue sources? I think the most relevant one that everyone looks at are property taxes generated. And if you look at current year property taxes, we're looking at an increase of almost $200,000 year over year. We expect that 2017-18 compared with 2018-19 will show the same type of growth, in fact slightly more than we'll see slightly more growth in the 18 to 18-19 fiscal year than we did between 16-17 and 17-18, and that's because we're bringing significantly more properties outside of the urban renewal area into the tax roll, and that has a significant impact. So any questions on the revenue side? It's all pretty straightforward. All based on estimates. Departments analyze what they know today and make projections based on what they know today. And that's why you see sometimes some big swings, because unanticipated events occur. A great example of that would be funds that we received in the police department this year for a wrecked vehicle. One of you had asked the question about why the big revenue and expense increase in the police department through the year. That was because we had a wrecked police vehicle. We received an insurance reimbursement that we hadn't anticipated at the beginning of the year, and we purchased a new vehicle. So that's a good example of an unexpected occurrence. When something like that does happen, you always see those major swings before you in a council meeting, because those funds do have to be transferred and reappropriated. If there are no questions on the revenue side, I'll move forward to department by department. I'm going to do the same thing in the on the expense side as I have on the revenue side, and that I'll touch very briefly and only point out any significant changes, material changes from the 16-17 projected budget to 17-18. I will point out one change that Julie made. It was at my request, but had I not requested it, she would have made it anyway, because it was an objective that I'd been working toward for the last 2 years, and that is a breakout of the employee benefits line item. And so what you'll see as you look at 16-17 fiscal year, and if you look at administration, employee benefits of $186,570. Well, we've broken that out so you can see, based on the specific area of expenditures, what the PERS contributions, the insurance costs, and employment taxes are that the employer bears. So it gives you a better indication of what our support costs are
Was that just not done in the past? We don't have those numbers? I was going to ask why there were just dashes.
We just have them lumped at the 186,000. If you look at in 16, 17, it was reported at an object category, which is the requirement by the state of Oregon. So that's traditionally what the city has reported. We wanted to provide a higher level of detail and make the budget document more user-friendly. So I asked Julie to break out the employee benefits costs more specifically. That's why if you look at 16, 17, you see the one aggregate number of the 186, and the 17, 18, we've broken that into the three numbers.
Right, I get all that. So my question was, do we not have those numbers for the last time? And it would have been extra effort to go and get them?
Would have been a lot of extra effort
Okay,
to go and get
okay.
them.
The other thing is for prior years, we can't change what was
The way it's
reported.
presented, yeah.
We're required to report exactly how it was done.
So the only substantive change and request in the administration budget is a request for a confidential assistant position. This position would support human resources, risk management, city administration, and would be back up at the front counter. We're encountering a lot of difficulty in simply maintaining the day-to-day filing responsibilities, reporting responsibilities, accounting responsibilities, and supporting duties for the one position that we have on our side of the counter in administration. So this would also free up staff time in the finance department that's required to provide backup to our reception position whenever the receptionist is on vacation, ill, or otherwise on vacation, ill, at lunch, or for any reason not at the desk. We don't have a second person in the office for that purpose. So, so the request is for an FTE. We provided you FTE breakdowns, and you can see them as they go down at the bottom of the personnel cost budget. We have refined those numbers a little bit, and as Julie mentioned earlier this evening, we've refined them by studying how staff were working in the different program areas. We've traditionally allocated employees based on an expectation of how much time they're going to spend in a particular program area. And we took a closer look at that, and if we felt that we were overcharging or undercharging in an area, we made the adjustment and we adapted the cost allocation to reflect more accurately the actual time being worked.
So what you're saying is don't read into that there's necessarily a hire gone on.
Right.
It's a rebalance.
It's the same number of bodies, just the time spent in specific areas of responsibility within the city's general fund may be allocated to different activities. So they may not show up in one department, but they'll show up in another department. The city administrator is, I'll use myself as an example. My time is allocated between city administration, public works, economic development are the three principal areas that my costs are allocated, because I also serve, as you know, as the economic development urban renewal agency director. And for the time being, I am still the Public Works Director and fill a number of different hats. And so we try to be as accurate as we can and not fudge those numbers. And that's why you'll see changes from year to year as we analyze how we are actually spending our time. So the only substantive changes in the city administration budget is a request for one new staff position that would divide time between human resources, city administrator, support Kim if Kim needed assistance, and provide support to the front counter. Relative to, you'll notice an increase in liability insurance. Our liability insurance is tracked based on information provided to us by our insurance carrier. We have no control over that. It's principally experience-based. There are factors in insurance allocation methodologies called experience and exposure. The experience is how well or poorly we did the previous year. The exposure is how many things we have that could potentially go wrong that are measurable. And those two factors are added together, and that's what gives us the rate.
Are we still in that pool with a lot of other small governments when we last talked about this? Because over the last couple of years, it's gone up quite a bit. And either we're exposing ourselves a lot more, or whatever. But I knew we were in some kind of pool or something like that.
Yeah, we're with City County Insurance Services, and yes, we are unfortunately exposing ourselves more by having more reportable incidents, and so from our end, our experience factors have not been great, and the rate increase reflects that.
Okay. What is this? Just the way? What's going on? Is society changing? Just suing you more often, or what?
Well, I can't really talk about ongoing claims, but let me just say that we've had a combination of incidents and factors that have led to an increased costs in our liability programs this year.
Okay. Yeah, I know you're restricted. I'm not going to push that anymore. I know you're restricted about what you can and can't say.
Yeah, so we've had some incidents this year. We're working through them, but and we actually worked through almost all of them. But the outcome is that we're seeing increases in costs, and those increases are appropriate given our experience. Fortunately, that experience is measured over a extended period of time, and so you get a smoothing effect, so we don't have the huge spikes when we have really bad years as we have had, or the major downturns when we've had really good years. We just see small increases and decreases as we go year to year. So any questions on the admin budget? Okay, moving to personnel services. This is our HR program. You see it's pretty straightforward, no real changes here, and the increases that you see are principally straightforward operating cost increases.
Wait, what page are you on?
I'm on page 39.
You said HR finance.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm talking about finance. Excuse me. Finance. I read the wrong line. Finance.
Okay.
You haven't seen increases. The expected budget is $360,000 versus $433 in fiscal year. I can't see with my glasses. Yeah, I'm in finance. Here we go. Excuse me. I did not put my glasses on, and I lost track of place where I was. We're looking at increases from an expected 2016-17 $436,000 and a proposed budget of $481,000. We have a 0.1 increase in FTE based on that reallocation methodology that I had mentioned to you. We do have an increase in our audit budget. But beyond that, there are increases principally in PERS contribution insurance benefits. So now that I have my glasses on, are there any questions on the finance? The court budget, the courts are seeing a small increase in FTEs. had asked you what that was, and you told me earlier today, and I don't
It's
remember.
just an increase in hours.
Just
existing.
an increase in hours for an existing part-time employee. They still are working with a fairly short staff, working successfully. You will note, and I think it's important to point out, that this court program is self-sustaining, it's self-supporting, the revenue generated in the program. The courts do not exist to generate revenue. I need to say that right up front. However, the court system does support itself with its operations.
Now that we've put speed tables on Birch, are we going to see less speeding tickets being
I'm
handed out?
afraid that we are. I'm afraid that we
I
are.
see it.
See, Bob?
I don't know about that one. Guys on motorcycles.
Yeah, true.
We'll see what happens.
We did have a question I'd like to address real quickly in the supplies and service, an increase of about $6,000, and that is for a metal detector, walk-through metal detector. Given the nature of some of the Class A misdemeanors and some events of the past year, the need to implement some higher security measures seems pretty apparent in the courtroom, and so we are recommending that we fund that apparatus to improve the overall security of the courts.
We have a question on that. I was
Yeah.
going to ask that later, but I'm curious about that. What incidents, why do we suddenly have a need for higher security? There's still a number of county circuit courts that do not have metal detectors. I'm concerned that that's going to then require an extra employee to monitor that for when people come and go. It's going to increase the budget for maintenance and replacement of that. And so, to the extent that increases our budget to some amount, maybe $6,000 out of $480,000, but it's going to continually be an added burden on that particular budget. And I'm wondering why it's suddenly necessary. You imply that there was some major event here in our city that has made it especially needed for us, but.
Not a major event, and if I did not mean to imply that there had been a major event, there just we are handling more misdemeanors now, and have the potential for more trials. The judge doesn't feel as safe now as he has in the past. He's expressed his concerns relative to safety. It does not actually increase the need for security, because right now our bailiff has to wand every person who walks through the door, which is very time consuming, and if we have a busy court calendar, tends to slow things down because he can only let people through the door as quickly as he can complete the physical check of that individual. And to me, it seemed like money well spent in a society that seems recently to be getting a little bit more aggressive rather than less aggressive. And as our community continues to grow, which we certainly are, then I don't think the need is going to diminish. I think it is only going to increase. So at any rate, that it is my recommendation, and you as a committee can certainly strike that if you don't deem it appropriate or necessary. So that is the court budget. Any other questions other than the one that was raised? And we can come back and address that. And if you want to address that in the form of a motion, when we come back and summarize this, I'll identify that, call it out, and then we'll have a chance to address it in greater detail if necessary. So
I have a question about the courts with the FTEs. When you look in the back on the appendix of the FTEs, the court has gone up from 2 people in 13-14, which I know is kind of ancient history, up to 4.3 now. Is that just reallocation of workload between various people, or is that actual increase in number of people we need, or what?
Well, the number of citations has been going up moderately, but what we found was that we're not, this is based on information in discussions with the courts during our budget meetings, is that we're not able to follow up on the fines that are issued, and we're not able to pursue the collections as aggressively when we don't have the staff to accomplish that. What these additional positions in fact do is help us generate more fine revenue by getting a higher percentage of payment of the fines once they're levied. The increase does seem to have helped the overall collection, does seem to improve the bottom line of the court operations overall over the last couple of years.
Doing it that way doesn't even suggest a quota system.
There is no quota system. All we do is, we only cite people who are violating the law. Any other questions on the court budget?
Hey, sorry, excuse me, just maybe a procedural question. Mr. Chair, I know in years past, we've designated a parking lot list or a
I do have
bubble list.
metal detector on the
Okay,
bubble list.
thank you, sir.
Yeah, that's where I have it too.
So, Rick, time check, what are you thinking?
Time check at 7:57. I can work through the balance of these in about 10 minutes.
Is the committee agreeable to an extra 10 minutes? Get through it?
Yes.
You're sure, Rick?
Yes.
Parks and police.
Yeah.
Okay.
Parks and police, they're virtually, those are two of the easier ones.
All righty.
So planning, the increase from 1.4 to 1.5 allocations is only that reallocation that I mentioned to you to better reflect time spent. It does not change the number of bodies or number of staff hours worked. The budget increase from projected to proposed from 224 to 235 seems very reasonable to me. I think Brian does a great job in managing his budget. Any questions on planning?
I have one question. I know in years past, I'll bring it up, I know that we've contracted with the county and with the increase in building that we've had and have been having. Is there discussion of taking that out of county's hand and bringing that back in-house, or are we leaving it as is?
For the time being, and we just really don't have the capacity to first of all, it'd be more expensive. It'd still be more expensive to do it ourselves because we'd have to hire staff to run a building department. There is an efficiency in having the county perform this function, and what we found in working with the county, and we've had to stay fairly close with them over the last couple of years, is they have been staffing up to handle the increased demand. What we found is that they've become more responsive to our needs and to our building community's needs, which has been a real positive outcome. At this stage, I don't think that, I mean, I'd be happy to entertain this discussion later in the year if you'd like to sit down and talk about it. I don't think it's that's the right place for this conversation, but we can have that conversation. I believe that the outcome will be that it's still more cost effective to have the county perform the building function and the city perform the planning function, and we're still engaged in the building function. We receive 12% of the building permit fee, and that's where you see the relatively small revenue generated on that revenue page in the building department. We still receive a portion of that, and that's for the percentage or the part of the building permit issuance process that we're still required to do. Yes.
Now, cut me off if I ask a question that's not allowed to ask, but I don't think I am. So I'm just curious why it looks like, for instance, if you compare for planning, these are very highly skilled people, with a unique skill set, and their insurance, for instance, is the balance there is 14,000 out of a total of 113,000 in salaries and wages, so like 12%. If you compare that ratio to, say, finance or administration or some of the other groups, the insurance and benefits portion is more like a third in a lot of other groups. And for planning, it's more like 12%. I'm curious why that's such a swing from one, grouping to another.
I'm assuming that one of them probably doesn't take insurance, do you know?
That is correct.
Yeah.
And you may have some people who only have single coverage in one department. You may have people who have family coverage in another, so.
Well, that's why.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, any questions relating to building or planning? And we'll move on to the next page. Police, we are still operating at 28.3 FTEs. That there's no change there. The budget is really very much a status quo budget in the 17-18 fiscal year. The chief is operating within all of his budgeting parameters. I'm very pleased with the work that he's doing with his staff. We had one question arose relative to the work of code enforcement, and last year we combined the position of code enforcement and evidence, allocating a half-time to each, and whether that is working. I had a long conversation with the chief this morning, and able to determine that, in fact, the pairing of those two functions seems to be working pretty effectively. The one place that we may have seen a drop off is the self-initiated work of the code enforcement officer, but the responses to complaints and calls for assistance are occurring at a level that we would expect them to, immediately within 24 to 48 hours. So I'm very pleased with the outcome and feel that we are accomplishing what we had hoped to accomplish, which is save money in the aggregate and be able to add one sworn officer to the street. Yeah.
So that last part is what my question was about. The last time I talked to the chief 2 or 3 months ago about this specific thing was his desire to add at least one more officer on the street. And this shows 28.3 last time and 28.3 now, but you just said we're adding one to the street.
No, we added one last year. We added one in 2016-17. We went from 27.3 to 28.3, and that's where we're staying this year.
So we're not adding another one?
We're not adding a new position. No, I was just going back in response to a question that was raised, whether the combining of evidence and code enforcement was working or not. And because that's what enabled us to add the position last year. We combined two non-sworn positions to create one non-sworn position, took the other allocation, made it a sworn position, and added one sworn officer to the street last year. That's how we were able to add it.
So a follow-up question as to the process for this. Now, does this budget come from the chief on what he'd like to have, or does you guys have a conversation and you present this to Julie, or how does this part come about?
This is the budget that I am recommending to you.
Okay.
The chief is not in disagreement with it. He would love to have 32 officers. He will tell you every day that he would love to have 32 officers. But if he has 32 officers, we will not have anybody else working for the city.
Right. No, I get it. That's just my one concern is this is a very, very small increase to, this and Public Works, arguably two of the most important pieces to the city. And this is a very small increase when, the department's pining for another officer to have full-time coverage and those kinds of things.
No, we already have that officer built into it as part of the 16-17 budget. We built that cost in, and we're rolling it over as and increasing it proportionally for 17-18. So it is built into it. Any other questions?
Yes. I've actually been asked by somebody what percentage of the police budget was spent on training, so I just wanted to make sure that these two line items, training and travel and traffic safety training, are the only line items in which training is included. And also, second part of that question is, can you give me a rough idea how much of travel and training is travel versus training?
I don't have that information.
Rick, one more question. I hate to keep us here after 8, but I do have a question. I know we covered the ground rules for having conversations about the budget. Is the chief going to come here, or how would we actually ask the chief about his desires for the department if we're not allowed to talk about it outside of these meetings and he doesn't come to these meetings? Or if he's not going to come with that? Just a hypothetical.
Well, this is, and I guess that's a potential problem. What you're seeing is the city administrator's recommendation. And my job as the budget officer is to present you my recommendation, which results in a balanced budget. You've had conversations with the chief. You know he wants more positions. I know he wants more positions. I know that if we add more positions, we either reduce our reserves farther or we lay off somebody in one of the other departments. We've already laid off people in the other departments in prior years, and we haven't laid off anybody in the police department. And what we're trying to do is restore some level of equity to the other departments within the city that have taken substantial cuts in prior years. In my conversation with the chief, and I've had several multiple-hour conversations, he would like new positions, but he would, if he was here tonight, he would tell you that he is satisfied with this budget.
Okay, but my question was, if we're not allowed to talk about the budget outside of this meeting and somebody's not here, how do we figure out that piece? I mean, are we not allowed to talk to the chief about these numbers and this thing now since the budget's been presented? And if not, so we're just contained into this little circle here on who we can discuss this budget with?
Well, once it's voted on, I don't think it matters.
You know, what, is there information that you are needing?
I'm wanting to know if that's the rule. I'm trying to restate my original question. We went over the ground rules a month ago or so, and I believe they were said that we couldn't talk about this budget outside of the budget meeting. So if the chief isn't going to come here, and we had a question as to how this fit into the chief's grand plan for the police department, how would we just have to ask you guys to then go ask the chief, and he'd have to come answer to you, and then you'd tell us, or how would we handle that kind of a question?
Yeah. Well, once it's voted on, then you certainly would be free to talk to anybody you wanted, because the duties of the budget committee would have been executed, and the budget would be moving forward. The chief would be here tonight if he wasn't satisfied with the budget. And my job is to sit down with the chief and develop a budget that he is satisfied with, that I am satisfied with, that I can present to you. And I mean, that's my affirmative duty as the budget officer. If you're not satisfied with the budget that I presented to you and you want the chief to appear, then you can choose not to vote on the general fund budget tonight. You can hold it over to the next meeting. I can order the chief to show up at the next meeting, and he can tell you that yes, he would like more positions, but that he understands that in order to get into more positions, the city would have to lay off existing employees. And that would be the outcome of that conversation based on the several conversations that I've had with the chief leading up to tonight's meeting.
So I'm understanding the only way is to somehow postpone the overall vote and call the chief to come here.
Well, we're not voting tonight anyway. Correct, Julie?
Correct.
Yeah.
On this.
This is just presentation.
I will say that when this budget's put together, it is done collaboratively with each manager, and there were conversations where Rick and I sat down with each department manager and director and went through their numbers, and everything in here was agreed to by the entire management staff. So,
you know, it's my job. It's not my job to make departments happy. It's my job to present to the city budget committee and to the city council and to the constituents in the city a balanced budget that often doesn't make anybody happy, but it addresses the greatest needs of the greatest number of people in the community. And we're a diverse community with diverse needs. And so I said my job is to negotiate with the departments and a budget that they're comfortable and confident will allow them to perform their essential duties. And if they disagree with that budget, and I've told them, I've encouraged them to come to this meeting if they disagree with any aspect of the budget and present an alternative viewpoint. If they wanted to argue with my recommendations, to present an alternative viewpoint. My duty is to be a strong advocate for this budget. If you as a budget committee want to advocate for something else, I'm okay with that. I mean, I fulfilled my duties and responsibility by presenting to you what I consider the best budget for the city of Canby. And if you as a budget committee and you have full authority to recommend something different than I do, what we try to do as a management team for the city, and that is the 8 or 9 department heads that we have in the city, is to sit down and work out a plan and a program that works for everybody, which means that nobody really gets everything that they want. We all compromise because there's an understanding that if the chief gets a new officer, then somebody's going to lose somebody. And there's a clear understanding that as an organization, we are just about as lean as we can possibly be today. I mean, there just isn't any, and I mean, you're not seeing positions added in planning, even when we're seeing the kind of growth that we're seeing. And if I was going to be recommending another position aside from the one to support all of our administrative functions, it would be a position in planning. That would be the next thing on my priority list, because I don't think that we have the capacity now to handle the volumes that we have. We simply have a very good staff. But having said that, you know, what we do is we sit down as a management team, we work as a team to develop a budget that the entire management team can support, and then that I also can support and recommend to you. And if you want to take a different approach on it, and I mean, I don't order department heads to be present at these meetings unless they want to argue a different position. And because my philosophy is if they're supporting the recommendation of the city administrator, there's not a need. But if you have a different viewpoint, then I will step aside and I will order each of the department heads to appear at each of the budget meetings so that you can ask them not what they think they can work with, but what they would like to have. Because if we all told you what we would like to have, we would never get a budget. That's just my philosophy.
Rick, I am really sorry if somehow you misinterpreted my question, because it was not criticizing, challenging, attacking you in any way, shape, or form that you felt. It was a totally hypothetical question, because I did know the chief did want an extra person. I was hypothetically just asking, what's the process? If I wanted to ask the chief about this, how would I go about doing it? So I was not, I'm sorry, I must have taken offense, because that's all I was asking is hypothetically, what would be the process? So
Yeah, no,
no need to go any farther.
Okay, let's go ahead and draw a line here at 8:15. Pardon?
Someone on the comm there wants to say something.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, this is Jason.
Hi, Jason.
I think the answer to the question that's being posed is we've already established a way in which these questions can be answered. We can either, if there's a specific question for a representative of the city, we can submit it via email in advance to, I'm sorry, I forgot your name, the budget lady.
Julie.
Budget lady.
I apologize.
That's okay.
Submit that to Julie, and they'll find out that information. And if that does not satisfy the question, I think it's been laid out that you can, we can delay this. It can be put on the bubble that we create to get more information, and then either the chief can come in and show up and say what he wants to say, or the representatives from the city can come back with the answer to the specific question. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay. All right, I'm going to call time. I'm kind of concerned that Parks is going to generate some questions as well, and the city council has spent some hours very recently talking about that, and I'm concerned that questions will take some time to address properly on that. So Julie, are we okay with pushing off the remainder of general fund and the public hearing and comment until next time?
Oh, we have public hearing tonight.
But we've not gone through, we've not completed our budget yet, our general fund budget. So we have to renotice?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And I can't meet the notice requirements for next week.
How much notice time do you need?
We actually only have 3 more budgets left. I can get hopefully through them pretty quickly. The Parks budget is actually pretty straightforward.
I've seen a lot of body language that says people are ready to go.
The alternative is like put it out another couple weeks then, if we don't have adequate time to notify the.
Well, we'll end up having to meet each of the next 2 weeks.
Yeah, we'll have to meet May 25th as well.
I'm okay with staying.
Pardon?
I'm okay to stay.
We're here.
Does anyone have to leave?
The other thing we can do is we can cut off this discussion and move up the public hearing and public comment, if you would like, and carry over the rest of the general fund.
Okay, that's permissible. Everybody okay with doing that really quick? It's going to be a very short hearing. Julia, Rick, can you set the context for why the public hearing on state revenue sharing, just so everybody understands?
State law requires that we hold a public hearing to hear from citizens on their ideas for uses of our state shared revenue that we receive.
Okay, everybody okay, understand that? I will now open the public hearing on the use of state revenue sharing. The purpose of this hearing is to provide the public with an opportunity to submit testimony concerning the possible uses of state revenue sharing funds for fiscal year 2017-2018. The order of business we will follow in conducting this hearing will be A, to receive public testimony, B, questions from the committee, C, the hearing will then be closed and no further testimony will be received, D, discussion by the committee. Any interested person may present testimony. On the conduct of the hearing, if you wish to speak, please fill out one of the testimony forms and submit them to the chair. The chair will recognize those persons wishing to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the committee chair. When you come to the microphone, please state your name for the record, as this hearing will be recorded. Please speak clearly into the microphone and limit your testimony to 3 minutes. The public hearing is now open. We will receive public testimony. Is there anyone who would like to speak on the matter of state revenue sharing? Hearing none, do we have any questions from the committee about state revenue sharing? I'll now close the hearing. No further testimony will be received. Does the committee have any discussion about state revenue sharing? And hearing none, Julie, does that fulfill our obligation?
For public hearing, it does, yes.
All right.
We need to do this one now, too.
You need the public comment?
Yep.
Because otherwise you'll have to do notice.
Yep.
And we'll miss that as well. I will now open the meeting to public comment on the 2017-2018 City of Canby budget. If you wish to speak, please fill out one of the testimony forms and submit them to the chair. The chair will recognize those persons wishing to speak, and any questions should be addressed through the chair. When you come to the microphone, please state your name for the record, as this meeting will be recorded, and please speak clearly into the microphone and limit your testimony to 3 minutes. Is there anyone who would like to make public comment on the 2017-2018 City of Canby budget? Seeing none, we will close the public comment.
There we go.
Are we okay now?
Yep.
All righty, so next time we will pick up with parks, finish the general fund, and hopefully finish out all the other funds as well. All right, need a motion to adjourn until May 18th, 2017 at 6 o'clock. Is there a second? Was that Kathleen? All right, it's been moved by Tracy Hensley, seconded by Kathleen Kelso to adjourn until May 18th, 2017 at 6 o'clock. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And we are adjourned. Thank you all very much. My apologies. The urban renewal section took longer than we anticipated by a bit. Again, if you have questions, get them to Julie. And we'll see you next.